Welcome, my name is Ketzel, and I remind people of who they've always been through timeless principles that are intertwined with nature. Today I'm talking about something that's relevant to what's happening in the world. I want to talk about how crisis creates clarity. And this is not just relevant to what's happening right now currently, as you see the potential of war, the potential of that side of the polarity, but just the realization that these things is an intrinsic part of life, right? That we have moments where things are peaceful and that we have moments where things are chaos, where things are happening that appear to be very chaotic or that are out of our control to keep harmony, right? So I just kind of really been present to a lot of things at this moment, because I think that when things are good or things are peaceful and there's harmony and things are going like the way people want it to go, that things manifest a certain way. But when hardship comes, when struggle comes, when crisis comes, things manifest a different way. You get to see all facets of humanity in those different contexts. So the people who you might know in the context of good times, when hard times come, you will see the other side of them. You will see another part of them, because the good times are not able to show you or extract or generate that behavior out of them. So in order to get a well-rounded view of yourself and others and who others are, you have to kind of be put through these different contrasts. You have to be put through the good moments and also through the hardships, as how you kind of see who people really are. But it's just made me very present, because seeing what's happening, in Ukraine, and seeing how when it comes to real life crisis, everything is clear, right? And I had made this post many weeks before about how in a true crisis, there's no confusion, there's no debating. Like, everybody is so immersed in what's happening because it's so vivid and real. Like a lot of people were saying that COVID and all this was a crisis. But to me, it was like, well, if it's such a real phenomenon, why is there so much debate? Why is there so much confusion? Why are people arguing about it? Because it's not really the type of crisis that it's being made out to be. Because when we do see a real crisis, like what's happening right now, look how people are moving. Everybody is moving in accordance. Nobody is denying what's happening. Nobody is trying to argue if it's real or not. It's so unequivocally real that all the people are left to do is move, to take action. That's all that's happening right now, is people are taking action because of how real the situation is, right? So that's how you know when something is truly real versus something is being projected or being shown to have an effect on you, but it might not reflect the reality of your real world when you actually go and experience it, right? So I think that these moments is when things, when things come to the light, when things are exposed, and the clarity and the simplicity of humanity in these moments really gets distilled down to the basics. So I think that when we have a lot of time and room and for imagination and the different things are happening, people get lost in formulating their own realities because they're not called to be present in this reality. They're not called to be very present in the physical, tangible world. So people escape through their mind, and they create all these belief systems. Like a lot of the things that we've seen in recent times is just like a residual of people having too much time on their hands and being able to being afforded the ability to dream up ideas and being able to manipulate and manifest them out into the world as if they were real. This is called, I believe it's called reification, is when you treat an idea or a theory as if it's actual fact, right? And so that's what I believe is happening. So when crisis comes, it's like it shakes everything up, right? It shakes everything up, and you can't play anymore. It's not time to play games and pretend that we're in ooey wooey land or that we're imagining things and stuff like that. Now you're grounded, fully grounded to this reality, because your reality is shaking you up so that you can be present to the current moment. So one of those things is is people's roles, right? And specifically, I want to talk about gender roles and stuff because that's one of the things that struck me is like when hardship comes, traditionally it's always been men that come on the front lines, that have to go to the front lines and literally like lay their life down for the people. So, a lot of the movement of the feminist movement and a lot of these narratives that are being pushed, they forget to mention that, when shit hits the fan, it's men that are on the front lines that are having to defend the children, the elders, the women. Like, men, we go and die, for this. So, like, what's happening right now, basically, they're not letting 18 to 60-year-olds leave the country because they need them to defend their country, right? So it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, when things get challenging and crisis comes, oh, we know who we are. Oh, best believe if you're a man or if you're a woman or if whatever becomes very clear to you in that moment, because all of a sudden you're being called to action. You're being called to fulfill a role that's dependent on your life. It's not like this game that we can play politics back and forth and try to cloud the definitions of things. No, it becomes very clear. Oh, you about to lay your life down? Okay, then you go sit over there then. You're not a man. But if you want to be, this is what's going to happen. You're going to lay your life down and you're going to put yourself on the front lines because that's your role. That's your role. And I'm not saying like that there ain't women that are being soldiers, but like that's optional. The first people and the majority, the vast majority, not just currently but throughout time, it's always been men. And so it's like you get to see that dichotomy of like how people start sliding in their own position naturally when pressure is applied. And I'm not even talking about just gender roles, but when we think about roles as far as who's the commander, who's the chief, who's the one that's going to execute the orders, and who's the foot soldiers, like all these things just very seamlessly fall into place because it's not time for games no more. When we have all this room allotted and we have all this time that we think that we have, people start dreaming up ideas and try to manifest them ideas as if they're real, but when they might not be. They might be constructions of our own mind. They might be constructions that we've created because we've had the time to sit and think about things. And so also what this does, it just really hones in on what's really important, right? So it's like in a moment of crisis, are you thinking about the shit that you'd be thinking about in a regular moment? Are you thinking about all your possessions? Are you thinking about your career? Are you thinking about all the things that you've been taught to give value to? Do they matter in a moment of crisis? And if they don't, then you probably should go and reconsider how much value you attribute to these things. When shit hits the fan, you no longer care about them because that's giving you a signal. It's giving you a signal that you don't really care about that. It's conditional. It's based on the condition that there's peace, that there's tranquility, that there's harmony in your life. But as soon as hardship comes, what are the things that you drop? What are the things that you ignore? What are the things that don't matter anymore? That's a good indicator of what you could focus on to see what's really important in life. Is it all the possessions? Is it your job? Is it even some people around you? Is it even relationships that you have? Like, how are you responding in those moments, and what are you thinking about? So the point of this is like to give clarity and understanding and empowerment through those hardships, through those crises, so that you can leverage a situation that might not be so comfortable into something that can potentially reveal things about yourself that can help you in the long run. So if you've never like been tested through hardship, you never really know who you truly are. You don't truly know who you are until you go through the fire, until you apply pressure to yourself, because different parts of yourself will emerge as you go through that process. So that's what I'm saying is, if you can be aware when the crisis comes, when situations in your life present themselves, of how your mind is functioning, who you are being, who you are, how you are taking action, how you're responding, that's a good indicator of showing you who you are. Some people might be courageous when things are harmonious, when there's peace, But as soon as something challenging comes along, as soon as they're presented with a situation that requires them to be more mature, to be more level-headed, to be more compassionate, more prepared, they fall to the wayside and they expose the true aspects of themselves. So I also wanted to touch on why cities are targets. So, a lot of what I talk about is based around nature, and it's based around this idea that there's three worlds, that there's civilization, that there's the internet world, and that there's the natural world. So why are cities targets when it comes to conflict between different civilizations, different groups? And you got to think about that, right? Because nobody's going out to a lake to try to take over a country. Nobody's going to the mountains to try to take over the economy of a country. They're going to the cities because that's what we're fighting for, or that's what they're fighting for. They're fighting for control in civilization, within civilization, for civilization. It's not about the natural world. It's about the resources that have been accumulated in these cities. It's about the resources that exist within these cities and the infrastructure. So nobody's, like I said, nobody's going to a river to hold it down, to try to fight for it. They're going to the cities because, one, that's where the resources are at, but that's where the people are at, and that's where the capitals are at for civilization. So, I made it a point a long time ago. I would say 5-6 years ago, to not be in those concentrated civilized places because I did not resonate with that frequency, with that behavior, with that world, with that lifestyle. So you got to understand that whenever you position yourself, wherever you position yourself, you are being in alignment with your environment, whether you like it or not. If you are choosing to be there, if you remain there, even if you were born there, but you have awareness enough to remove yourself, you are choosing to align your energies with the energies of that environment. So you got to realize that comes with a certain repercussions, right? So because it's concentrated, because it's a lot of resources, that's the number one target when it comes to these things like wars and conflict and even protests. Everything's being fought in cities and civilizations. Nobody's really going to nature to fight for anything, unless it's like a pipeline or something like that that's happening in a natural place. But for the most part, a lot of the debate, the politics, the war, it's all happening within civilization because that's a byproduct of civilization. So it's like if you remove yourself from that environment, you automatically don't have to see that or respond to that or be get caught in the crossfires of whatever's happening in civilization. So that's why I made it a big part of my journey to be in natural environments, to be closer to natural environments, to be surrounded by trees, surrounded by nature, to be surrounded by these elements, because that's the frequency that I want to tune into. That's who I want to be. That's a representation of myself. And it goes way beyond the food that you intake. It's about what you're looking at every single day. Are you looking at greenery? Are you looking at plants? Are you seeing the different cycles of the plant growth? Like, a lot of people are familiar with the fruit, but they don't know the tree. If you ask them to, what does a mango fruit look like? They wouldn't know, but they'd tell you what a mango looks like. And that's very indicative of our consumerist mindset. Like, we're only thinking of things as products and objects, not as beings that we have a relationship with. Because anything that you have a relationship with as a being, you understand its cycles and its nature and its development. Like, you wouldn't understand people without understanding that there's children and babies and infants. You take all of that information and you condense that as a part of the organism. It's all part of the organism, that whole stage. But all people are familiar with is the fruit. They don't know how does a sapling look like. They don't know what is the shape of the mango leaf. What is the flower of the mango look like. But they know the fruit. So that's the thing, that we're unfamiliar with life and we only relate to it as a product. So I think being in more natural environments and places allow you to see the unfolding of life throughout its different stages, not just the end product that we benefit from consuming and what we call food, but to see that life has its own agenda and organisms have their own agenda. They're not just existing for us because They are intertwined with the rest of life, and some organisms we don't even interact with. So their agenda for us is meaningless, because they're just intertwined with the web of life, not directly towards us. But when we look at things as just a product for ourselves, we kind of turn into a commodity, right? And we have a different perception around it. So putting yourself in natural environments is one way that you can alter your perception around food, around reality, around nature, around just your perception of yourself. And so another thing that comes to mind when shit hits the fan, when crisis appears, is sovereignty. And this has been a big topic for a long time, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people watch from the sidelines for many years and they never take action, and they're allowing themselves to stop themselves from taking action, right? Because it does take a certain amount of courage to take that plunge, to take that leap of faith, to go out and do something different, to go out and leave maybe the place that you grew up, to go out and try to figure out something new for yourself and create a different path, to reroute your own destiny. It does take courage, so I understand, but it's just unfortunate that a lot of people are sitting, watching, taking up information, and it's been 5 years, it's been 6 years. They're still in the same situation that they find themselves in. They still haven't had the courage to actually take action on it. They're still not living the life that they want. They're still working a job that they don't like. They're still doing a lot of things that doesn't align with their soul. And at the end of the day, this comes down to sovereignty and being able to make that path, because it's a multi-generational approach. It's going to take time for us to regain that sovereignty as individuals, but also as a tribe, as community, as a collective. So although I'm not in a rush, I think that we must use our time efficiently, and that we must learn how to take steps forward towards our goal, because it is going to take time, because it took a long time for us to separate away from nature, separate away from our sovereignty. So it's going to take time to regain those skills, to regain that knowledge, to regain that awareness and that lifestyle. But moments like this really highlight the importance of that, because you think, well, where's your food come from? Even the people that claim breatharianism, I don't know if they're in the room, but even the people, when we talk about reproduction, you don't reproduce with air. It's very clear that in order to reproduce, you need energy. You need energy to create something that's energy, a person, right? And women know this. They're more sensitive to their reproduction cycles, because they're more susceptible to them, because they're the ones that have to bear the children. So the body understands what it needs and what it doesn't at certain times, So I see a lot of people make the mistake that just because you can go without food for 30 days, even say you go for 2 months, doesn't mean that you can go without food ever again. That's just silly. It's foolish to think that, because life works in cycles. It's just because something happens once doesn't mean that it should remain that way. It just means that this is part of that cycle, So that's how I look at it. That's my understanding of it. And I'll go deeper into that topic later. But the concept is basically that, where are you on your road to sovereignty? Are you taking control of some of the things that you have outsourced? Are you maybe taking control of your health? Are you aware of your physical health, or are you still outsourcing that to a doctor or a physician or somebody outside of you to tell you what you need to be doing with your own body and with your own self? So that's one thing right there that you could take control of. What about your education? Have you taken back control of your education, or are you still looking for institutions or textbooks or academies or whatever to give you all your education, because you don't want to find that within yourself? Obviously food, when we talk about food, are you growing any amount of food, or are you having any relationship with your food in terms of harvesting it from wild environments or foraging it from, any environment? So there's so many levels to this. So when we're talking about sovereignty, that's why I'm not naive enough to say that it's just a quick fix. A lot of people who barely come in, they think they're just about to go into nature and be happy and live happily ever after. But it's it's so much variables to it, especially the world that we were born into. It's not like it's just a perfect place for that to happen. There's a lot of things that have changed, and a lot of things that we're not thinking about because we don't have that relationship to nature. We think that it's just growing fruit year round and that shit is just on a silver platter for us to consume. And that was the whole concept about nothing in nature is free. Like, you got to use energy. Can you climb a coconut tree to get the coconut? Because the coconut ain't free. The charge for you to eat it is can you get it? Can you access it? You know, and that requires your body's energy. A lot of people, if they had to access a fruit that was out of arm's reach and they had to climb the tree, would they be able to even access it? You know, so this whole idea that things should be free is like an entitled concept, because I believe that access should be free. We should be free to go access things in nature, in our environment, but nobody's gonna bring it to you. Like, you're used to that because you go to grocery stores, because you go to farmers markets, you see the abundance, but you don't see the work that went behind to harvest that, to bring that to market, to nurture that, so that you can have the option to buy it. Like, so it's a mistake to think that you're about to just have everything for free. Like, the Garden of Eden is just a story. It's an allegory, but you know, that's just how people think because they don't have that relationship to nature. So it takes a while to really understand that. It takes time and being in natural environments, natural spaces, seeing some seasons the trees don't produce that well. Seeing some seasons, like, it's not even that well of a harvest. Like the other season, we only got like 2 or 3 avocados off of that tree that usually does pretty good. So it's like we romanticize and idealize nature, and that is a detriment to our sovereignty because we're thinking we got plenty of time. We thinking it's going to be easy. We thinking it's just going to be simple. And so you prolong it because you think, at the end of the day, I just walk out. But one of the quotes that has stuck with me, I don't know who said it, but the quote is something along the lines of, you don't rise to the level of your expectation, you fall to the level of your training. So a lot of people are thinking that they're about to basically become Superman as soon as shit hits the fan, because that's their expectation of themselves. But the reality is that they're just going to fall to the level of what they've been preparing themselves for. So if you're not fit already, you're not about to run 20 miles just because shit hit the fan. If you don't know how to farm, you're not about to have a green thumb overnight just because shit hit the fan. You know, if you haven't been conscious of your communication, of your parenting, you're not about to change all that behavior overnight just because shit hit the fan. No, that's not how it works. You have to already be doing all this stuff so that when shit hits the fan, so that when things happen, so that when crisis comes, that you're prepared. And it's just, you've already been training for this. So it's like, that's the incentive to stay on your discipline, to stay working out, to stay eating healthy, to stay in tune with your body and be prepared for whatever, and be sharp and aware of your environment, your surroundings, of the world around you, because that's just how you move, so that when shit happens, it's not this big jolt of energy. It's just something that you've already prepared for and trained for, because that's life. You know, I know in the conscious community, there's a lot of focus around like, oh, everything, you know, we just got to focus on positivity and love. And it's just like, I get that, you know, and I'm not like trying to preach a message of fear. What I'm doing is I'm making it realistic and having people be prepared and be optimistic about their preparation and realistic about it. So it's like, they could sell you all that every day, but it's like, if you're not ready, we live in a world of polarity. We live in a world of duality, of contrast, and things are always happening. Like, they're always gonna happen. I'm not trying to, you know, aim for any type of what people will call a heaven on earth or Garden of Eden. No, I just think that life is perfect the way it is. It's got duality. I'm okay with that, you know, because without that, I don't understand what harmony is. I don't understand what peace is, you know. So my goal isn't to eliminate that from the world, is to learn how to cultivate the skills and the abilities to deal with it in my reality when it inevitably shows up. So that's the difference between that. Like, I don't look at it as a negative thing. I just look at it as what existence is, and I accept it for what it is. And with that, I prepare myself to confront and deal with what is, you know, because all throughout your life, if you look, if you go and take inventory of what has happened in your life, there's always been events, there's always been situations, there's always been things that have happened that went in a way that you probably didn't want it to go. Now, you could say you were maybe focused on it, your vibration was off. Okay, cool, all of that. But what if you just weren't prepared, and that's why it hits you the way it hits you, because you're mentally ill-prepared, you're not sharp and aware of your reality, so you let it slide and build up and fester, and when it hits like it's nobody's business, And so that's the key difference, of how I look at things, because I think it's all balanced. What we see in our reality is what we see because it's reality, it's life, it's humanity, it's existence. I don't think that we should try to eliminate it. I think that trying to eliminate it is a fear-based approach, because you don't want to deal with it. You want things to be easy. You want world peace because you don't want there to be anything that's challenging you in your reality. That's just how I see it. Anybody that's kind of like wanting world peace, it's just because I understand it's an individual approach anyways. I can't make anybody be peaceful. I can't make them see the world the way I see it, and so it's like you're trying to eliminate something that you don't even have control over. So the only thing that you have control over is yourself and how you respond to life. So yeah, somebody said what would they say, radical responsibility, yeah, or extreme ownership, however you want to word it. That's just how I look at it. Everything in my reality that I'm responsible for, especially myself, my family, my environment, what's within my grasp and my control, I make a conscious awareness to make myself responsible for. And I use moments like what's happening right now in the world, not to make myself not be about to go take action over there, but to remind myself to stay ready in my reality, because I don't really know what's happening, the specifics of anything outside of my immediate environment. We hear things and we see things on the internet, but it's like a slippery slope, because a lot of times we're not there. We don't know the history. There's always two sides to every story. But what we can do is take the moments, what's happening or what they say is happening, and use it as a moment and a lesson to understand how we can better our own self in this experience, in this moment, and remind ourselves of the discipline and to just stay ready, be prepared for whatever, because that's life, and the more you work on yourself, the more you'll feel prepared. Like once you get like fit, like say you're working out, you get fit, you feel ready. Like you feel like if you got to run right now, you can run. If you got to climb something, you can climb. But when you're not at your best, when you're not sticking to your disciplines, you don't feel confident and equipped to deal with reality. So that manifestation doesn't only apply to the physical, it applies to the mental, it applies to the emotional. You have to be dealing with all these things all the time and confronting them head on, because there's going to come a time when they're going to pop up. Tell me you ain't had emotional discussions or emotional conflict. We all do. All these things pop up in our reality. So it's not about if, it's about when, and are you going to be ready? So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to share today on this current situation, because it's just been really present to me. And it's just been serving as a reminder. So it's like when times like this come, like I want to go harder. I want to be more present. I want to be more aware. And I use it to empower myself. And I hope you could do the same. So if anybody has any questions, or if you want to come on the live, feel free to join. I'll hang out for a couple minutes. Let me see if there was any questions. Okay. It's nice muscles and pecs. I'm grateful. Oh, it says there's actually people disputing what is happening in Ukraine. Yeah, I'm sure there is. I mean, nowadays you have everything. You have people questioning everything, and it's like, and that's what I'm talking about. But the people that are doing that, I think that it's not happening to them in their reality. That's why they're comfortable questioning it elsewhere, right? But as soon as shit hits the fan wherever, they're in their present reality, things will change. They'll be snapped out of that, because people get on these devices and you got to remember that a lot of people are just spreading information. They get a joy out of that. They get a joy out of creating conspiracies. They get a joy out of like flipping the narrative in a way that's abstract and that's like taking it to a whole another dimension of reality, right? So it's like that's where you get all these extreme conspiracy theories and stuff, and some of them might be true, some of them might not, but I'm just saying, like, I think when adversity comes and crisis comes, that helps to ground people. It helps to bring people back to reality because they have to face what's right in front of them. You can't run anymore. Like, you can run from issues that are elsewhere. You can run from a lot of things, but when things are in your present reality and they're at that grave of state, it's just very hard to ignore, you know. And I think that that's what snaps people back into being present and being grounded in reality again. You know, unfortunately, it has to come to that for some people because that's how much we've disconnected from ourselves, and these processes of death have been elusive, you know. So we don't have to see animals dying, we don't have to see people dying, we don't have to see people suffering. So it's like it becomes almost like this ignorance of reality. Like, we don't really know what the full spectrum of reality is, so we start making up ideas and theories like, oh, maybe people don't actually die, maybe it's all in my mind, maybe, you know. And it's like some of these things are true to a certain extent, but like, okay, what about when somebody right in front of you does that? Like, how are you going to react? Like, that'll let me know what you really believe and what you really think. It's easy to just formulate ideas, but until you're presented with it in your tangible reality, you won't know how you react. Yeah, but it's just, I think that there's been things going on all the time, you know. It's just about how we use them, how we perceive them, and are you perceiving it in a way that enhances you? Are you using it to remind you to stay present, to stay focused, to stay disciplined, all that good stuff, you know. Florida says sacred masculine and sacred feminine have been confused by magicians. Yeah, and I'll talk about this some other time, but you know, I think that it's just a lot of pointing the finger, you know, from both sides of masculine and feminine, like this whole idea of toxic masculinity, and now the men are talking about women are toxic and women only want your money and all these things, right? But it's like anytime anybody demonizes anything is because they don't want to understand it. So the reason people demonize and use these labels for things is because it gives them an excuse to not have to understand it. Because if something's evil, well, it's just evil. That's all you got to know. It's just bad. No further questions. But when you look at it as behavior, when you look at it as a primal instinct, well, now we have a right to kind of investigate, and maybe we want to look into it further because we're people too. And so if that exists out there, you can bet your ass that there's a percentage of that exists within you. It might not be in the same capacity, so, but it's still within you. So that's how I look at it. Anytime anybody points labels or calls anybody anything, you know, I just, it signals something for me, and it reminds me to not get caught up in that, because anything that exists within that person, like, oh, you call somebody a tyrant, you don't think there's a part of you that's a tyrant? You don't think that given the right circumstances, given the right situation, that you might do something that's reminiscent of tyrannical? Like, if you think that that's not the case, then you are out of touch with reality, because we all have that potential. It exists within all of us. And if you know that, well, at least now you can be aware of it and you can regulate it if it shows up. Now you can at least, but if you fool yourself, like thinking like, oh no, I'm perfect, I don't have none of that. I'm not, those qualities aren't inherent in me. Like, to me, that's naive. Like, because we all have things in us and potential for things that we got to make sure that we regulate. Okay, we mentioned that. Florida said, man, protect us from monsters in this life. Women protect us from monsters in the spirit world. I like that. Like, you know, and I think there is some truth to that, to where men are the more physical, tangible protection, and women are more of the spiritual protection. I definitely see some merit to that. Yeah, but, you know, so it's like when things get challenging. Like it just snaps things back to the default settings in a way, because shit could get out of hand sometimes. In civilization, you have all these things. People are free to do whatever they want. They can create and become whatever they want, and it's like this infinite possibilities. But then when shit like this happens, it's like, go back to the basics. You need food, shelter, and water. Men protect the women. Women go over there with the elderly, and y'all stay safe. It just becomes so basic and simple, and that's what you got to appreciate about it, is that it snaps us back to a very grounded, tangible perspective. So like that's how I look at these kinds of situations. Yep. Somebody said, what does my body look like? That I don't know. What does it look like? The government owns everything. Everything is under just simple human rights anymore. Yeah, I mean the government or people too. Like like even if you're in the tropics or somewhere like that, right? Somewhere where food grows abundantly, people are occupying land. So it's like if you go to somebody's yard and try to get the fruit, well, now they legally can like sue, or they can legally shoot you in places. So it's like even people are regulating land and resources to a capacity that is just not in alignment with how things have always been. So but I mean, I think even at some points there was tribal groups who regulated certain areas. Like you didn't just go anywhere because you encroach on people's territory, and you got to be aware that there's people that live there and they might not be so friendly, and they might not want to share their resources. So I think a version of that has existed, but it's like now it's just weird because it's like you can be right next to somebody and not know them, not have any relationship to them, and y'all just side by side next to each other, like in some sort of jail cell or prison, and so it's like there's no loyalty, there's no community, there's no bond. So it's like when things happen, you can't really put your trust in them unless you have that bond. Yeah, yes, people have told me I look like him. Oh, people have told me I look like a lot of people. Oh, Prince of the Way says, you're a great speaker, bro. I appreciate it, bro. I've been honing it for a long time. If you go look at my old YouTube videos, I was not this person. I was a completely different person. So I amaze myself with like the level of growth and development that I've gone through to just speak in front of a camera and express myself, articulate myself. It's really been a journey. If you go look at my old stuff, it's cringy. Yeah, you can go look, but I cringe when I look at it. Can you talk more about preparations on living off the land? Yeah, I mean, it's just don't kid yourself. Like, don't think it's just gonna be as simple as you might make it out to be. Be prepared to put in work. Be prepared to fall in love with the process. Be prepared to be patient, and just know that it's so many different ecologies too. Like I can't even say like I can tell you about what grows here and the climates here and the ecology here and the animals here, but you go somewhere else in the world and it's a completely different set of organisms. So the climate's different. So how you build shelter is going to be different. How you harvest food is going to be different. The animals that you're hunting might be different. So you have to move differently. I mean, there's general principles, but I would just say to just be prepared to put in the work and fall in love with the process and let it change you, let it restore you, let it remind you of who you've always been, and embrace that process, because I think that deprogramming can be the most challenging part, because you think life should be a certain way, and when you get there, it's not the way it is, and you kind of left feeling like stuck because you don't feel like you belong anywhere now. Now you felt like you didn't belong in civilization, but then when you went to nature wasn't what you thought it was. So now it's like, do you go back to civilization, or do you acclimate to nature? And it's like, I think people get stuck between that. A lot of people go back to civilization because they saw nature and they realized it wasn't what they thought it was, and some people acclimate and they go through the process and they rewild themselves, and they become, a new version of themselves, or they restore the ancient version of themselves, I should say. So it's just like, I think it's all about perspective and the mind, most of all. Like, I think the little things, like the skills, like particularly like starting a fire or hunting or growing food, I think that that's the easy part. Like, that's the part that you can find in books, that people can teach you, that you can look up courses on. But the mental part, like the mental aspect, I think that's why it's important to have these conversations and to come on here, because a lot of people aren't prepared to deal with nature for what it is. So when they get to nature, they try to make it something that it's not, and a lot of people that are teaching about nature, they're detached from it, and they're trying to teach concepts and ideas that are highly romanticized. So they don't really reflect the natural world. Like, you hear all these things everywhere, like, no organism eats the milk of another species. And then you find out, oh, actually, there's a couple things in nature that do that, but, so it's like we try to use nature. And that's the thing that I was talking to my partner about. Like, it kind of, I feel like I have to say something when people try to make nature be something that it's not, to fit their own narrative. Because it's like, I'm okay with people having their preferences, but when you try to use nature for your agenda, or you try to use indigenous traditional ways for your agenda, like, that's when it's like, okay, that's not what it is. Like, you got to stop. Like, be who you want to be and embrace what you want to embrace, but don't make something be something that it's not, because that's one of the biggest characteristics of civilization, is trying to make things that they're not. And the primary example is people. How many times do you see people be trying to be made something that they're not? What do we do with children? Don't express yourself. It's inconvenient to me. Don't do that because I don't like it. Don't do that because what are people going to think? So a lot of what civilization is doing is trying to get people to not be who they are, to not express the fundamental nature of who they are. Oh, you should be in this kind of relationship. Only be like this. This is how you should be. And then their nature gets suppressed, and we get, over many generations, that nature keeps getting suppressed. So the person that was suppressed, when they have children, guess what they're going to do? They're going to suppress that, because you can't give anybody anything that you don't have within. So if you are not in your full expression, if you're not a wild, undomesticated human, you can't give that to somebody else. So whatever you are, when you reproduce and go through the mitosis and reproduce yourself into another self, you're just going to program that self with your own program. And so that's why a lot of this is just the mind. It's conditioning. It's preparing people mentally, psychologically to let go of what they thought they were and to embrace what they truly are. So, yeah, I guess that's my advice, is just be open to the psychological reprogramming of nature and everything that it brings, and just be prepared to let go of a lot of shit. Let go of a lot of programming, a lot of things that you thought were true. Let go of a lot of physical things, a lot of amenities that you might not need, but you are accustomed to. Maybe let go of people that might not be serving you. Just be ready to detach and let go, and embrace the real, embrace nature, embrace the wild, And so, yeah. So Nessa says, so how do you respond and deal with judgment? I'm okay with judgment. I think that we always judge. I think when people say that, I think they mean like condemnation. Like, so if I see somebody and they have a certain behavior, I'm judging that. I'm like, oh, look at how they treat people. Because if I don't, then I'm just intaking information and I'm not doing anything with it. Which in certain instances, it could be beneficial, just be neutral observer. But in other situations, in most life, I would say, you want to be judging things. You want to be observing and making judgments off of things. But that's different than condemning people. Like, okay, I see that you did that. But condemning would be like, oh, no, you need to go to jail, or you need to get locked up, or you're a bad person, you're doing this, you're doing that. That's different than judgment. Judgment is just coming to a reasonable conclusion based off of your observation, and that's subject to change. So if like somebody shows you a part of themselves, you make a judgment then, and then they reveal more of themselves, and then you refine your judgment, and then they show you more of themselves, and then you keep refining your judgments, and you're always judging. So it's like, I don't have an issue with that. What I be aware of not to do is to condemn people and to understand the purpose behind it all. So if anybody's being who they are, I make room in my reality for them to express themselves, because I recognize that as a part of my reality that is intrinsic to it. I don't want to remove it or take it away or make it not be what it is. I just want to allow it to be, and I'll be the judge of whether I want it to be close proximity to me or in my reality at all, or how I want to relate to it. I'll make that judgment based off of how I see fit. So, yeah, I mean, people are always going to judge. We cannot judge, but I just try to do my best to be accurate and to be understanding of who people are and allow them the space to be themselves, because I want that for myself. And it's a lot of times where you might not want to do that because you don't like how it feels for how they're being, but you got to understand that, you have every right to remove yourself, A, and B, that might just be who they are. You shouldn't try to change them or make them not be in their true expression if you want your true expression to be allowed. So it's like, if you just don't want that in reality, you remove yourself. But I think people should be allowed to be who they are, and then we should deal with them how we see fit based off of who we are. So Love Nature Life said, where are you based? So I'm in Hawaii right now. I'm in the tropical UVB abundant Hawaii. Big Daniel said, what's your ethnicity? I mean, I don't really believe in all that. I believe, I look at humanity as a race, right? Different manifestations of different beings. And this is one thing that kind of differentiates me from a lot of people that kind of use certain people and races as scapegoats. Like, I don't do that. I just look at myself as a manifestation of a certain part of humanity, and so I see myself as a bridge to different things and to different people. So, but like, if you're asking, that's a challenging question, because a lot of people are confused by that, and everybody has their own interpretation of what the heck ethnicity is or race is, right? Like, so as far as I know, like, my lineage derives from what is now known as Mexico. And so even if we look at that and break that down, it's like, well, what is Mexico? That's a country. That's borders that were established by governments and ruling people who enforce these laws, right? That are not natural laws, but now we're talking about civilization. So whenever we direct it in that way, it's like, well, were you just talking about from a civilized perspective, from a civilization perspective, but if you're talking about nature, and that's why a lot of like indigenous traditional people make sure to make it a point to state whose land you're currently occupying, because that makes it more it kind of takes out the civilization. Now you're talking about groups of people that have traditionally occupied those lands, so it kind of brings it back down to the natural world in a way, and to the non-civilized human world. So you can be human without civilization. Like, that's what a lot of people don't get. People think the world is ending, but it's really civilization that might be ending. But if you're so immersed in civilization, you won't know the difference. To you, it will feel like the world is ending, right? So I think that's what's happening, that a lot of people feel that kind of coming on, and in their perception, in their reality, it does feel like the world's about to end, because that world is shaky. That world is unstable. And so, but if you put yourself in the natural world, if you abide by the natural world, if you attune yourself to the natural world, there's a certain tranquility and peace that comes with that, because you know that that's infinite. If nature doesn't exist, nothing exists. Civilization doesn't exist. Humanity doesn't exist. None of that exists. So it's like, it's the most fundamental source that you could tap into. So I think that the reason to elude all these labels is to connect back to the source, because that's where our true origins originate, and that's what we truly are, is our nature. So that's the long answer to what ethnicity am I. Like, I don't care for the labels, but if you want to trace it back somewhere, it's in a region in what is now called Mexico. Tuan said that's the process of becoming civil, right? The suppression of the wild self. So Anya said, I'm transitioning from a home with air conditioning to a shed with no electricity and live off the land for a bit and save money. I live in rural Australia, and my husband and I want to go live the camping life. Yeah, that's cool. Like, I think that's a great experience to have. And it just depends where you live. Like, I think here where I live, you don't need AC. Like, a fan is sufficient, in my opinion, for even the hottest days, but so it just depends on your environment. But I do think that humans have existed in different environments and they've managed in different environments. So like, we've just kind of homogenized reality. So whether you're in Australia, you're in Europe, you're in the United States, you go into a public building and they all have the same temperature of air, because they're all using air conditioner to homogenize your reality. You go from your air conditioned car to the air conditioned building to your air conditioned home, and it's like you never truly feel what nature feels like. You never truly feel what natural air feels like, because you're insulated from that experience. You are only being immersed in homogenized spaces and places where nature is so much variation. Like, you can drive 30 miles and it's a different weather. It might be raining 10 minutes from here, but it's not raining here. So it's like so many microclimates that you're not experiencing when you homogenize your reality in that way. So I think it's a great experience to do that. Yeah, I'll definitely save this live. Anybody have any more questions? I'm just trying to... Chakra Body said a lot of Mexicans are indigenous. Yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of people are. To me, the thing is, that's a weird word to me sometimes, because like, we're all born on Earth, right? So we're all indigenous to the Earth. But the thing is, here, and I made this distinction, that people are born into cities. So cities kind of insulate you from the natural world. So you're not really born in civilization, in nature, as much as you are into civilization. So it's like, people are familiar with Los Angeles, but they're not really familiar with the ecology that Los Angeles is built on top of. They don't know the animals that have traditionally existed there, the plants, the flora and the fauna of that environment. But they're familiar with the city. They know where the liquor store is at, or they know where the grocery store is at. So are you really in that part of the world, or are you in a city that's built on top of that part of the world? So so I think that that's where I kind of see the difference. And also to say, like, that you can re-indigenize yourself no matter who you are, I think, because indigenous is about having a relationship to the land, to the ecology. And I think that I make it a point to focus more on that, because by now the mindset has been so tainted, right? Like, you can get people who are indigenous might want to be embracing a lifestyle that is completely different from where they come from. And it's like, so what do you do with that? So how can we, like to the earth, how can the earth know who we are but by our relationship to it, right? If the earth was a living being, which it is, how would it know us? Would it know us through our lineage, through what's in our blood? Would it know us through how we look? Or would it know us through how we relate to it? Would it know us through how we touch and step on the earth, and how we treat the trees and the animals, and how we relate to life on the organism? So that's how I look at it. Like, if you want to be indigenous, if you want to embrace your indigeneity, that you have to take certain courses of action that will create that relationship. Because otherwise, you're just saying a word, you're just using a word, but what words without actions, what is that? So it's like, I know that there's a lot of hurdles. I know that there's a lot of challenges, but we still have to move forward with action, and we still have to have a plan of action. And that's how you manifest goals, and that's how you manifest things to actually happen in the world. So, and there's many ways to do it. That's the beautiful thing. Like, I do it with information, with sharing things online, with sharing content, but I also do it with, learning skills, learning to hunt, learning to grow food, and learning about my ecology. And some people do it through different practices, rituals, things of ceremonies, things of that nature. Because even Europeans, they were indigenous at some point, right? You have certain tribes in Europe who were living off the land as well. So it's like I try to bring that awareness, because I'm not against any group of people. I don't believe like European people or white people are the enemy at this point. I think at some point you were able to look at somebody and be like, oh, that's what they believe, because they're living indigenous and those are the European. But at this point in time, the consciousness has been so cross-pollinated that you don't really know who somebody is unless you talk to them and unless you dissect their belief systems. Because you could have, like I said, you could have an indigenous person who's trying to be the next lawyer and next president of the United States of America, and then you could have a European person who's really deeply invested in connecting with the land and their ancestral ways, and to just being an asset and a benefit to the ecology and having harmony in that. And so we have to start judging from that point, because that's more accurate. At some point, we could have just saw how people looked and made an assumption that probably would have been correct. You probably could have looked at a Native American indigenous person and been like, oh, that's their lifestyle. But you really can't do that nowadays, because it's just so cross-pollinated. All right. What do you think about ayahuasca ceremonies? Have you participated in one before? Yeah, ayahuasca ceremonies. No, I haven't participated in ayahuasca, but I've been through experiences that I would say, based on how people share their ayahuasca experiences, have been very similar. But that was under the influence of no drugs, just people. So the thing about things like that is that you can show people themselves, but it doesn't mean that they're going to take action. It doesn't mean that they're going to make concerted efforts to change their behavior. It just means that you showed somebody themselves. So a lot of people that I know that have done ayahuasca, they're still in the same situations, dealing with the same issues that they were before the ayahuasca. It's just that the ayahuasca presented them like, look, it just became a mirror. And that's what nature is. Like, nature is that mirror. You don't need to do these ceremonies per se, but when you go to nature and anything that's neutral in this way, it becomes a mirror to yourself. When you have to sit in isolation or sit in outside of the confines of everything that distracts you, like the social media, the movies, entertainment, all of that, you have to face yourself and you have to look at who you are and what you are and what you like and what you're not. And it just becomes this awareness that wasn't present before. So with that awareness, it's still up to you whether you're going to make any changes because of that awareness, or you're just going to continue that behavior. So I don't think that ayahuasca can do anything for anybody that they're not willing to do for themselves, because all it's going to do is show you yourself, and you can show somebody themselves in many ways. You can have a conversation and dissect their childhood, their psychology. Some people do it through astrology. Some people do it through all kinds of ceremonies. But the root of it is that unless the person is willing to make the changes, the strategy or the course of action is not as relevant. And so what people tend to do is they focus on the thing, right? They focus on the vehicle rather than the destination. Oh, I could smoke some weed and it leveled up my consciousness. So they stay smoking the weed because they think, oh, the weed is it. This is the healing thing that's going to heal the world. But it was just a vehicle to your destination. And so eventually the vehicle runs out of gas and all you're left with is your own 2 feet, and you got to walk yourself to wherever you're going. So you can use these vehicles if you want to use them. But I think it's a mistake to focus on the vehicle and to not embrace the destination where that is intended to take you. Okay. Or through our genetics. Okay, let me see. Oh, I think I have a question. in the question box. Oh shit, I got my... Can I turn my badges off? Damn. I guess I can't turn the badges off, but somebody asked, you believe in religion, do you accept or reject LGBTQ? I mean, I don't know what you mean by accept or reject. I accept everybody. I accept everything for what it is. I don't deny or turn anything or anybody away. I just want to know what things are, and I accept them for what they are truly. So I don't look at it like this acceptance or rejection in the sense of like I have to do anything about it. I'm aware of things, and I want to be aware of things, and I want to be aware of things for what they are. So, I don't, like I said, it's the same labels things, what I was talking about, labels. Labels are just an identity that we create, and it sometimes doesn't really reflect who we are, and we get attached to the labels, just like getting attached to the vehicles. And so it's like, just be who you are, man. Like, be who you are, and embrace yourself 100%, and the world will embrace you. All right, yeah. Okay, I think I reached the bottom. I hit the bottom, y'all. If there's no more questions, just take some deep breaths. Coach Michelle said, what message do you have for me? The message is to be aware. Be aware, and when challenging situations come, be aware of who you're being, and be aware of who others are being, and be aware of how you perceive it. And ask yourself, are you prepared to deal with life? Because life is contrast, life is polarity, life has all types of wonderful challenges in it that are meant to elevate us to our truest and highest expression. So the question is, are we equipped? Are we confident? Are we prepared? Are we ready? Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, on all levels, to deal with life. And that's what this experience is. It's just life, and learning how to deal with it and how to embrace it, not demonizing it. There's no need to demonize it, because we're here and we're experiencing it, and anything that anybody does anyways is a part of you, because you're human too. So if you demonize it, you're just demonizing yourself, but if you embrace it, then you're embracing yourself, so it's just about understanding. Like, the reason people fight and there's conflict is because there's misunderstanding. Somebody somewhere along the way didn't want to understand, or they chose not to understand, and so there was misunderstanding that was created, and there wasn't clarity that was had, and there probably wasn't communication. So it's like the root of all that, and the solution to that is awareness, and from awareness comes, you might communicate, and from communication you might get understanding, and well, I would say in communicating effectively. From communicating effectively, you can gain understanding, and once you have understanding, there's no need for conflict, because you understand why things are happening, and you understand the nature of life and reality. So why fight that? Man, these ants, I don't know if you can see it. That little thing right there, it feels like it's much bigger. These are fire ants. and when they hit you, you'll know it. I don't know where that came from. But yeah, that's the word for today. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and that you are at peace, and that you remain on your path, and that you accept everything and learn how to use it to the best of your ability while we're here. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Stay balanced.